Hi, in this video we will work on equations of inverses. So we talked about what inverses mean, and then in this video we will actually be able to create the equation from scratch. So the main point is x and y will switch. So if I know f of x equals y, so I'm not switching it, I'm just rewriting into something that I already know. So if I know f of x equals y, then the next step is you're going to switch x and y. So where I see y, I'm going to write x, and where I see x, I'm going to write y. And then you're going to solve for y. So minus 7 on both sides. And then you're going to divide everybody by -5. And you can choose to put everything under -5, or you can choose to split that fraction, those into fractions. So divide by -5 right here. So I have y on this side and I have x minus 7, everybody divided by -5. But that looks funny though. Let's clean that up. So y equals, this is a fraction, that is -1/5x plus 7/5. And then the last step is we need to write this properly. You need to write that indicating that this is actually the inverse function of this one. And the proper notation is with that -1 right there on the exponent. That indicates that this function is the inverse of the original function. So -1/5x plus 7/5. So now the next one, we're going to follow the same steps from example 1. So the deal is this one already gave me y equals. I don't have to change that to the other step. So where I see y, I'm going to write x, and where I see x, go ahead and write y. So add 6 to both sides. Divide both sides by 2. Now, I have a square right there. So in order for me to get rid of that square, I need to do the reciprocal operation. And here will be square root. Now, every time I take the square root of something, it's always going to be plus or minus. Let me add the visual for you. So here, if I were to graph this quadratic function, it would look like a smiley face. Okay? And you remember from the other video that we talked about inverses, their reflection, that's the reflection over the y equals x line. So this is the y equals x. So when you reflect, it would look like this. Okay? Now, if you were to graph the square root function, so if you were to graph just the square root of x, the square root of x, the parent function looks just like this. Okay? But then you're like, hey, we're missing the bottom part. Okay? That's not why this is plus or minus, but you know, that's something for you to remember. Make the connection with the visual right there. Just mini lesson right there. Okay, back to the function, back to the question right here. So I will plus or minus right there the square root, and in the same time I will split up that fraction so I can simplify that. So I have 1/2x, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. And all of this under the square root equals y. And then the last step, you rewrite that as the proper function notation of the inverse. So f to the power of -1, x, the way you read it is the inverse function is. So plus or minus square root of 1/2x plus 3. So this is the inverse of this. Last one. Same thing, f of x is the same thing as y. The next step, I will switch x and y. So now I see y, I will write x, and then here I have x, and I will write y. -1 to both sides. and then square root. Remember, plus or minus. So plus or minus square root x minus 1 equals y. And then the proper notation will be f of negative 1 equals plus or minus x minus 1. So this is your inverse function of that one. Yes, we're going to graph it. Ta-da! So I will use blue for that one just because it's already in blue. And let's do -2, -1, 0, 1 just because it's easy math. So I'm going to create the table here. -2 squared is 4, plus 1 is 5. -1 squared is +1, plus 1 is 2. 0 squared is 0, plus 1 is 1. And 1 squared is 1, plus 1 is 2. Okay, off we go. Let's plot those points. And you remember from the last video that the inverse, it's y and x value that switched. So you can do the math here and calculate that when x is 5, we can just do 1 and then you can just switch the table. 5 minus 1 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. Wait, plus or minus 2 on there. Okay? So I can do 5 plus and minus 2. And we can plot 2 points in 1 right there. And then you can do 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1, plus or minus 1. And I'm sure you can do the calculation in your head too. That's why I went so fast. And then I have 1, 0 right there. Let's plot. Let's say that you were graphing and you just forgot the plus or minus right there. And then that should be a warning. Hey, if I'm trying to find the inverse of this function, this is missing something. So then you're like, oh yeah, that's a reflection over the y equals x line. So then you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. So, and then if you want, you can do the y equals x line right there, dot it, just to test out that you have the reflection across the y equals x line, y equals x. All right, I'll see you next time.